My experiences in foster care taught me a lot.
So my experience in foster care definitely taught me a lot. It taught me, number one, how to have just grit, to have strength, resilience. In the foster care system, I know we probably all have had bad experience, probably some worse than others. And just being able to go through those experiences and be able to tell my story about that, I think that was like the number one thing.
A closed mouth don't get fed. You know, you really need to learn to advocate for yourself. And the people who are probably taken more advantage of by the system are the people who don't advocate for themselves, because you just need to communicate to your caseworkers, your social workers, whoever is kind of advocating for you. Well, when I first went into the system when I was 13, the biggest lesson that I learned was that you can miss out on opportunities because of you. The situation I in wasn't my fault, but who I chose to be given those circumstances was my fault. And I was so closed off, and I wasn't willing to learn, I wasn't willing to change. You can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped, and I didn't want to be helped.
Coming out of the system, I don't think a lot of people realized that I had been in the system. It was kind of like, I was adopted by my grandmother, so people just thought, oh, she might just be living with her grandmother, but they didn't realize that I went through the system. My mom suffered from addiction issues, and my dad drank a lot or had his own things. And it was kind of weird to be around a lot of younger kids who had normalcy, where they had parents, they had money to go to the book fair and stuff like that. All these things had happened to me, but I'd never heard it happen to anyone else around me. And so just seeing how everyone lived somewhat of a normal life on the outside just made me feel really, really alone on the inside. I couldn't really talk to people about what I went through. I didn't think people cared. It took me about 18 years before I actually talked about my foster care experience. So when I got out of the system, I was adopted by my grandmother along with 4 of my siblings, and she was low income. We grew up pretty poor, and just kind of seeing what the system did to my siblings, and how my grandma had to handle that, being a person who didn't believe in like mental health issues, didn't believe in ADHD, ADD, or medication.
I moved a lot of like homes while I was in foster care, the 4 years that I was like moving place to place, and I moved 17 times in the span of 4 years. And I feel like your ability to talk to like adults like around you and like communicate depends if like you have a roof over your head. My senior year of high school, I had to deal with homelessness. I lived in my car. I guess I was really ashamed about it whenever I was in high school. Now I'm not as much anymore, because it wasn't my fault. It was the adults in my life who failed me. Like I had to like shower at the YMCA and like stay the night at friends' houses when I could on like weekends without like explaining my situation.
The shame and the guilt that we have being in a position where we're not necessarily like, we're kids. We're minors, we don't have any control over this, we don't have a say over this. We weren't like, yeah, I don't want to live with my parents. I mean, of course we're minors, we're kids, of course we want to grow up with our parents, we want to have our mom and our dads in our life. And I think like just having and holding that shame is extremely, extremely heavy. So I hear both of you guys when you guys talk about that.
Yes, I feel like also like we get stereotyped so often. Like the amount of times I've heard, oh, you don't like, whenever someone finds out like I'm foster kid, or like whenever I was a foster kid at the time, like be like, oh, you don't really like look like a foster kid. I'm like,
but that's really
look like. Yeah, what am I supposed to look like? Am I supposed to be wearing a trash bag? Like, what am I supposed to look like? And also, it's like you think that it's nice to like put me up, but it's also putting everyone else that I know who's been in the system like down.
Exactly.
I got in trouble for so many things that weren't my fault, and that eventually that messed me up so much that I became that person. You know, they saw me as a liar and a thief. And so even after my brother left because of unrelated things, that was still who I was, you know? And so that's who I became. I had one good friend who stayed by my side throughout childhood, you know? He didn't see me as that, you know, he saw me for who I was. And I think that if he hadn't been there, I wouldn't have come out of that. Having people care for me whenever I was a kid, I didn't know what that felt like, honestly. So I would push people away. As part of the reason that like I kept going with the lying and stealing was to push people away, because I knew that they wouldn't want to be my friend. And then if they weren't my friend, I couldn't get hurt. In my own little way, I was protecting myself. But after that, I realized people that actually cared.
What if the story you're telling yourself isn't the whole story? We're all moving through life boxed inside an invisible, personal reality filter. a perception box. Your perception box shapes how you see the world and how you judge yourself and others, often without you even realizing it. So if something in this episode makes you a little uncomfortable, ask yourself, what am I reacting to? What story am I believing? And what might I be missing? Now let's get back to the video.
I've had to raise myself emotionally.
My biological family weren't the best. They were involved in things that one shouldn't be involved with. And I had to witness that and see how these people were going with their lives and why they were going that way with their lives if there was another route. And I had to recognize that and be like, okay, I don't have peers to look up to. I have examples of people not to follow. And so anything that they did, I made sure to do the opposite. And so I kind of, we always say that frontal lobe development moment. It was like when I was like 10 or 11, I remember sitting on my bed, just laying back and crying and saying, why me? Why couldn't I have my parents? Why did I have to go through this? And why it had to go that way. And then for some reason, it just clicked. I was like, I can't change anything about my past. I can sit here and I can dwell on it and I can cry about it. Nothing's going to change. I can't change the people. They're adults. That's not my job. And from then on, I stopped dwelling on my past. I stopped asking the why questions and I started asking, when can I go on and be better? It's also frustrating when you see adults who don't have that level of maturity. You're like 30 something and what are you doing? We're forcing ourselves to grow up at such a fast rate that we don't allow ourselves to be free and childish. And when we are, we get punished for it.
I look at my life in stages. So there's like pre-foster care, then there's like when I was in foster care and then post. So when I was pre-foster care, living with my parents, living with my mother, my dad was non-existent. I had to raise myself emotionally. My mother was, she was there, but she was very absent emotionally and physically and mentally. So I didn't have the opportunity to kind of lean on my mom and stuff like that. Also with all of the abuse that was going on, I didn't feel comfortable enough to lean on her. I kind of felt like she abandoned me and she kind of picked men and chose men over me. My mom, she has to love me. She has to want me. To see her consistently choose men over her kids was one of my first heartbreaks. It just made me feel disposable. It made me feel replaceable. Having those feelings at such a young age, I think that it's emotionally draining. I know my mom went through a lot of trauma. She also doesn't have her parents in her life. So I understand that she was also searching for a love that she didn't get. Being in foster care, of course, you have orders and petitions and stuff like that by the court to do all of these things. You have to go to group therapy and regular therapy, and you gotta be at this court date, and you have to do this and this medication and all of that good stuff. So I feel like when I was in the foster care system, I was able to flourish and grow emotionally because I had those people around me that were like, you're going to therapy. And I remember my therapist sitting me down and she was like, so I'm gonna tell you this right now. You can either sit here and color, I'm still gonna get paid, but if you really wanna make a decision and make a choice to change your life for the better, you're gonna have to talk to me. And that's when I started opening up and stuff like that and opening up to my foster parents and things like that.
I can kind of agree with there have been people in my life that have helped me in certain periods, but I have not had anyone consistently stay. At all. Right now, where I'm at in life, I have no parental figures. I aged out of the system without a family or whatever. And so I've been doing everything on my own. I have genuinely no one to call for help if I am in a financial bind or anything like that. And I feel a lot of people forget that just because you turn 18 does not make you an adult. I ended up getting a tumor my freshman year of college. It wasn't cancerous or anything, thank God. But before I knew that, it was all I wanted to do was call my mom or something, but I don't have that. So I think a lot of just, damn, I really am on my own forever now. Because I didn't get that, sorry.
Okay. You got it.
I guess because I didn't lock in during while I was in foster care and I didn't like something would go wrong and I'd just be like, okay, yeah, I don't like the way that is. I'm just gonna leave. And I think that was just due to like trauma and being adopted, because I was adopted at 2, and then I got unadopted at 14 due to like sadistic child abuse and like every single form of child abuse you could think of I've been through. And I was just like, I didn't want to be trapped again. So I was like, I don't want to be adopted. And a lot of like foster families don't really understand that like just because I don't want like a piece of paper saying that like, okay, yeah, I'm like stuck with you forever, doesn't mean that I don't like want you to be my family. And a lot of people didn't understand that I wasn't like ready to like fully like make that commitment and like just trust like someone like fully. Because like everything was great before I was adopted. Like they seemed like the picture perfect family. They went to church like every Sunday, every Wednesday. Like people in the community liked them. Like they seemed like a great family. But then as soon as like people weren't visiting anymore and like the doors were closed, like it was just hell. And I was like terrified of that happening to me again. And I think that like could have like ruined my opportunity to like find my forever home. And then I got separated from my sister. She was like my baby. Like I raised her, like I protected her like, as best as I could. And being separated from her was probably one of the hardest things I've had to go through. Cause like she was like my person. Like we shared a room growing up. Like we just did everything together. And I think it was like we were each other's like safety nets. And being like separated just like forced me to like, okay, like I am truly like on my own now. And I have to like, grow up even more than I already had, I guess. Like, okay, time to be an adult, I guess, not just a normal adult in my eyes. Like looking back at my like younger self and being like, I was a child. I had no control over what was happening to me. People should have given me more grace. I think just growing up really just made me realize that like I am not what has happened to me. I should not be ashamed of these things. These are the people in my life, like when I was a child, those like the people around me didn't do what they were supposed to do, and that's why I was in that situation. It should not be anything that's shameful.
I feel like some of the common things that I see or I'm hearing is attachment issues. I think that we have gone through so many different changes in our lives, and people who say they want to help, or people who put up this facade of being good people and then behind closed doors they're not, has really allowed us to detach from people. And that causes a lot of emotional issues in terms of long-term relationships, familial relationships. I didn't like people getting close to me because I knew that they were going to be gone the next day or month. Things about people being there but not present, being absent, is something that we see all the time, and we don't know how to say that without sounding rude. But how do you tell someone who's supposed to be there for you that they're not? Even though they provide you with food and shelter and clothes, that's great. That's what you're legally supposed to provide. What about that emotional support? What about that, additional support? And I totally feel that. Once I turned 18, like, I was like, I'm ready to go. I moved out. I did driver's ed on my own. I helped my brother get his GED. I helped my Thea graduate from her college. And just a lot of different additional responsibilities that I thought that I had this vision of what these people weren't doing, and I knew that I had to do better. But getting my car on my own, going to a dealership was super scary. Getting my first apartment, credit cards, all these things that we don't learn, or we were never given the opportunity to learn. And then we had to do it on our own. And some people had the benefit of having support, and some did not. And some went the right way, and some kind of went the wrong way, and then are trying to get back up again. But I think that everything that you guys described as you're going through has in some way helped you emotionally mature, even if it wasn't the easiest or the nicest way.
I used to believe that being in foster care meant something was wrong with me.
Yeah, no, I believe something was severely wrong with me, man. Again, tough childhood. I had a brother who would do stuff, blame it on me, the tires, the fax machine. I didn't even know what a fax machine was. I still don't think I know what it is. But he would break it and I'd get the blame pinned on me, and then I'd get beat with it, and I got beat so much that they had a 2x4 and it broke so much that they hit me with that. And so it just...
You say a 2x4?
Yeah.
I had the same exact thing happen to me. I swear.
Yeah.
I swear to God.
It's the respect, and then they can't aim.
Yeah.
It's like, it's right there. Why are you hitting my lower leg?
The butt
man?
is right here, not that hard to miss.
Like, or the back, like, dude. But it's just like, I got beat for stuff that like I didn't do. You know, my older brother, he'd sneak into my room like every night and he'd hit me. And like it would leave bruises, and like he did other stuff that I can't say on camera. But it's like, it's that kind of thing where it's like, you know, I thought that it was something wrong with me, you know? And so I mentioned that like I grew up and then like I developed into like the kind of kid that they thought I was, you know, the liar and the thief. And so eventually they put me back into the system at 11 and a half, and they put me in a mental institution, you know? So I was there for a while. At therapy about like twice every week, you know, and I'd play chess with the therapist and we'd talk. And like, it took me so long to realize that like, I'm not the problem, you know? And I was in the system for that time. And so whenever I was getting close to my release date, the therapist, she asked me like, so how do you feel knowing that you're not going back to your home? And I'm like, what? You know, I wasn't told that. They didn't bother to tell me. You know, the dad would visit like maybe once a month or so. But it's just like, they never told me that. You know, they just stuck me there, dropped me off. And I asked her, I'm like, what do you mean? You know, that's my home, you know? Like, I hated it, but man, I had nowhere else to go. And so she's like, they didn't tell you. And I'm like, no, they didn't tell me. You know, they just told me that, you know, they'll be back next week. And, you know, so she called them and she was pissed out of her mind. And I'm like, dang, she's somebody who actually cares. And, you know, she asked them why they didn't, pardon my language, why they didn't have the balls to say it, you know? And they're just like, oh, I just don't feel like I can take care of him properly, you know? This is what's best for him. And she's like, well, why couldn't you tell that to him? You know? And so I sat there on the couch and I'm bawling my eyes out. And I'm like, dude, what is wrong with me? You know? And so coming out of that, you know, it took her a little bit to reassure me. But it's like, I remember the last thing that she did for me is as I was leaving, she gave me a little glass chess set. She's like, I want you to continue to play and, you know, work on this and, you know, maybe we'll play again someday. And, you know, I still have that thing at home, you know, I keep it clean. But it's just like, I spent so long wondering what was wrong with me, you know? And I got out and I'm like, maybe I'm not the problem.
I chose disagree because there were times where I definitely felt like I was the problem, but I always had like an underlying understanding that the people I was dealing with were kind of just messed up, you know? Growing up, my dad was in and out of prison before I was even in the foster system. And I never knew my mom. She was some drug addict that I just never knew on the streets. Eventually, we got to a point where we were really struggling financially. And, you know, I had to move all the time. I never could really make connections with people. And we got to a point where we were really struggling. We were living in a weekly, like it's like a motel. And we were just around a lot of bad people. And I remember telling my dad, I was like, look at what you spend money on. You spend money on weed, you spend money on this, you spend money on that. And you're just an idiot. You know, a 12-year-old kid telling a grown man that, you know, it wasn't the greatest idea. I got beat for that, but I kind of always knew that the people in the situation, you know, despite what they were telling me, despite them always telling me that I'm the issue, you know, this is why, you know, I've had foster parents tell me, this is why you can't make any connections with people. This is why, you know, people always leave you. This is always, you know, and although that did hurt and I might have maybe accepted it for a couple seconds, I knew that this wasn't true. You know, if I thought of another kid or my brother or someone else, I know that it wouldn't be their fault. So how could it be my fault? And I think of it, you know, you kind of got like this gate of what you let in and what you don't let in. You can listen to people and they're, you know, the poison that they give you, but you don't have to let any of that in the gate. You don't have to let any of what people, you know, try to tell you. Because they'll try to make you the issue. The way they treat you, they'll try to make you like you're just like this bad person, that your existence is not beneficial. And, you know, you start to feel that, but you know it's not true. In my situation, I knew it wasn't true.
In my adopted home growing up, like the Bible was used a lot against like against us in like an attempt to like explain why we were getting beat or like why we were being abused. Like spare the rod, spoil the child line is engraved in my head. There was definitely like times whenever like right before I left, I was like expressing, like I finally like broke down and I was like, because I knew that we had like a case open, so I knew that she couldn't like beat me or kill me or anything like crazy. So I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna lay it all out. Like this is why I made a report. This is why, like, your abuse made me so, like, it's put me in such a state that I tried to like take my own life. And like, she like sat there and like laughed at me and told me that it was a personal problem. She told me that if we did go into the system, me and my sister Jaden, no one would want us because I was a teenager. No one would want a teen girl. Me and my sister would get separated. She wouldn't love me anymore. All of these things, like this would be all my fault. Like, and I would be going against God. I would end up in hell, and all of these just insane things that are not true. But like in my like young moldable mind, I was like, that makes sense. Like you are the adult, you must know what you're talking about. Yeah. But after like getting out and going through like tons of therapy, I've realized that my circumstances were not my fault, but they were the adults around me. And I think like also through like high school and like making friends while also being in foster care, it was used against me a ton in high school. Like anytime I had a falling out with a girl, and girls can be mean. And they'd be like, oh, that's why you're in foster care. That's why you're always moving around. That's why you're this. That's why you're this. And I'm just like, at first it did get to me. Like the first couple times, like a girl or someone would say that to me. Cause it's just like, people use what they know like against you. And I lay everything out on the table. I have nothing to hide. And at first it got to me, but after a while, I'm just like, I tell everyone this, like, okay, everyone knows this. Like you're telling me that I move home to home. Yeah, that's my life. I know that. Like it's not some big secret. Like after the first year, that was not like, I was like, there's no way of hiding this. I'm moving home, like place to place. First question you get asked, like, oh, like where are you from? Like why are you here moving halfway through the semester? And they're like, I'm like, oh, I just move a lot. And they're like, oh, like parents in like the military. And I'm like, nope, I'm an orphan. And they're like, oh, so sorry. And I'm like, no, it's okay. It's just what life is. But yeah, that's.
I get that.
Yeah.
Were you able to get back in touch with your sister?
Yes, we still talk.
I'm happy to hear.
From the time that I was taken out of my mother's home at 11 years old till like 18 or 19, I severely carried the weight of thinking like everything was my fault. Essentially, my mom already had a long-standing repertoire with child protective services, abuse with several boyfriends, and nothing really happened until I was 11 years old. She actually ended up meeting this boyfriend. He was extremely abusive to me and my little brother. He was sexually abusive to me. And all of those things. So my mom left with him to Miami to go to the Latin Billboard Awards and left us with like her coworkers that she didn't even know for like 3 weeks. And her coworkers were like, I don't think this lady's coming back. And she ended up coming back. And the coworkers are basically stepped in and they were like, well, we see like you're having some trouble. So we ended up moving in a duplex. They moved on the upper level and we lived on the bottom. And as we were living together, I got closer and closer with the coworkers. Like I was always at their house every day because I hated being home. The man, he was just doing very weird and predatory things to me and I just didn't feel comfortable. So I was always at their house. And I remember one night, the boyfriend kicked me out the house. I was like 10 years old and he was like, you cannot be here. So I went upstairs and I remember we went on a walk at night and I told them, I basically broke down everything and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't feel safe about my situation. And if the abuse was so bad, I thought that I was either gonna get raped or my little brother was gonna end up dying. Like the abuse was just that severe. So when I did tell them and everything like that, they're mandated reporters because my mom used to work in childcare, which is so great. So they're mandated reporters, so they had to of course go to the state and that's how I ended up in foster care. And with all of that happening, everybody blamed me. I will never forget my mom getting arrested at my school in front of everybody and literally telling me like, what the hell did you tell these people? Like, what is wrong with you? How could you? My little brother would not talk to me for years because he was a mom's boy. He was very close to our mom. And he was like, why would you break our family up? I can't believe you did this. Mind you, the abuse that both of us endured abuse, but like the abuse that like seeing him coming home from school, like purple from the from the wrist all the way up, lashings on his back, bruises on my back and on my butt. Like, knowing and being so cognitive at a young age and knowing like this is going to end bad. Like, we read all those stories. Like, I remember reading like A Child Called It and like reading about like Sylvia Likens and stuff like that. Like, reading those horror stories of kids that were abused and ended up dying at the hands of abuse. Like, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to see that happen to me. So I told. And so I had to live with the regret of essentially saving our lives and saving our livelihoods and our childhood. So I had to wear that burden. It was something that I'm 26 years old. Around 19 is when I could actually like say out loud, like, this isn't my fault. But for the longest time, I thought it was my fault. Like, it was ingrained in my body and my mind just because of all the trauma that I endured. So yeah, it's very, very difficult coming out of that, especially when like your family is telling you like, yep, you are the reason. And at that point, you have no other choice but to be like, well, I did say something, and if I didn't say anything, then my family wouldn't be in foster care, and my brother wouldn't be adopted, and my sister wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be here, and you know what I mean? Like, the things that conspired after that wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have said anything. So I definitely lived with that guilt for a very, very long time. I already had like a chip on my shoulder. I always felt like it was me versus the world. So it just basically intensified that. It made me feel that I was nothing. It made me feel like I was alone. Not only am I going through this traumatic experience of being torn away from my family being torn apart, but now everybody that my brother and my sister that I love dearly, and even my mother, they still look at me as the issue. I think just because that they were the closest people to me, that's the reason why it hurt so much. And it broke me. It broke my spirit. It broke me emotionally, mentally. Now, I just want to give my younger self a hug. I feel like I took on a responsibility that was entirely too big for myself, even though it was well needed. Looking back, I just want to give myself the reassurance that I really didn't get from anybody. You did a really, really good thing. Like, what you did, you saved your life and your siblings' life and a life of emotional and further turmoil. And it was something that needed to be done irregardless of how everybody else felt.
I've forgiven the people who didn't know how to love me.
I always say like my two biggest betrayals in my life were my mom and my dad. Those are the two first people that betrayed me, and those are the two most significant people that betrayed me in my life. And with the concept of forgiveness, even though I've been through therapy, still going through therapy for countless and countless of years, it's extremely, extremely difficult for me to forgive my mom consistently. Mm-hmm. One of those moments, I was going through life and I'm like, oh, I forgive my mom. I can talk about my abuse without crying. I'm thinking like, I've jumped through a hoop, I'm okay. And then when I had my daughter, I resented my mother so much more just because a motherly love is something completely different. I can't even explain it. It's just like a unconditional like warmth. And I'm looking down at this little baby and I'm like, how in the hell could you let all of the things that you did happen to this same innocent, sweet baby? It's something I can't wrap my head around. Like, I get it. My mom, she had generational trauma. Her mother, she doesn't have her parents. Her parents died at a young age. She was raised by her aunt, also had trauma, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, anything that you can name, countless of boyfriends that did the same thing. And now, as a person who has also now have went through all of that adversity and still can be a decent person, I cannot comprehend how you can let those things happen, especially to the people that you love. So I try to let my parents into my life because just like any of you guys, I don't know, but I still yearn for my mom and my dad. I still want that. I still want that affection and that, that parent bond and relationship. And I would love to have dinner with you guys every Sunday. And so I continuously let them in my life, And when I do let them in my life, they show me exactly why I shouldn't. Like, my mom will ghost me and not talk to me for months, or I can't call on them for things. Or my dad, when I try to let him in my life, the only thing he has to say is like negative things. Like, I just graduated college. Like, I have 2 degrees. I've had my own apartment and gotten my own cars, and I've done everything by myself up until this point. And the only thing that you have to say is, why do you smoke so much weed? and why are you should give up on college, and just being so negative. So I feel like that plays a part in like my distrust and my ability to completely forgive them. I can say, like, again, I am in therapy right now and we're doing trauma work, great trauma work. So I'm in the process of trying to like hold that forgiveness.
My previous family, I'm not gonna forgive them, you know? They were late 60s, you know, they had a grandchild who's 18, you know? So you've had a kid, you know, you've had a grandchild who's an adult, and yet you still chose to treat a little kid this way who came into your house, who was put in your care, and they fostered other kids as well. So they know how to treat a kid. They just don't have the common sense to, you know? I firmly believe that everybody should have a psych evaluation at least every 10 years before they're allowed to have a kid. Beating me all the stuff that he did, I wasn't the first person that he did it to. There was multiple people, you know? And so why did it take him doing that stuff to me for him to actually be sent away and to get help, you know? Like, it shouldn't have come to that. It should have been the first time he did it, he should have gotten the proper help that he needed. You know, and then he got sent to a mental institution too for reasons, and like, I hope that he's doing better, you know. If I ever saw him, I would not talk to him, I'd probably run the other way. But it's just like, I hope that he got the help he needed. And then whenever I got sent to the psych ward, turns out it was the same one that he got sent to, you know. So it's like, for me, that really messed with me too, because it's like, why am I on the same level as my brother?
I had this friend, and her name was Juliana Payton, and went to high school with her, and we became really close friends. And this is whenever I was living in my car. My brother had passed away the previous year, and she found out that I was living in my car, and she very generously was like, "Oh my God, come stay with me, like, come stay with me, it'll be great." And again, we were really, really close. Like, at that time, I would have considered her like my best friend, like my closest friend. And I go in and like move in with her, and she ends up, I'm there for a week. Her dad ended up not passing like a background check he had something come up from another state, like a DHS case. So I could not live there. So I was told that I had to leave by my caseworker. And she ended up stealing half of my belongings and my dead brother's ashes. And I haven't forgiven her to this day. I still hold like a lot of like hate, definitely hate towards her, because like I was already going through the worst things possible, and I will not forgive or accept or excuse her knowing that I went through those things and choosing to make my time worse. Like, she had those, like, you have the decision, and like there's a certain point where like you know right from wrong, like you know what's wrong and you know what's right. You make those decisions. You're choosing to hurt people. It's just, I just don't understand how, like, it just comes like a point where forgiveness is like
Not possible.
Yeah, and also if you're not able to like take accountability, I feel like I'm very good at forgiving if you can just apologize.
Growing up, my mom was the black sheep of the family, so everyone just always talked down about her around me and my siblings. When we were just kids who wanted their mother, we heard some of the worst things that, why would you tell a child that? Throughout our childhood, and getting to know my mom's side of the story, what she went through, sexual assault. She was even raped at one point. Just all these things that she had gone through that caused her to go into drugs and abuse. When she finally opened up to me about it, it opened my eyes and made me stop being so prejudiced and understand that there are both sides to the story. Now, that didn't mean that whatever she had done and what she had led us up to was okay, but the fact that she had her own battles that she couldn't really handle and it led her down that path kind of allowed me to forgive her for all the things that she did not do in my life. I did not learn anything from my mother really, except how to be tough. My mom knows how to fight really well too, but I didn't really learn much from my mother except to be empathetic. I had a lot of hate when I was younger, and I saw how that made me, and I never wanted to hate anyone again. And so as I got older, I had to learn to forgive and keep my distance. So I've learned to understand my mom and forgive her because she was honest. She apologized. She addressed the things that she did wrong. My dad, I guess I want to say I've forgiven myself for hating him. I don't know that I forgive him completely. I think that the fact that he turned to religion was great, but I don't think I've exactly like forgiven him for the things he's caused or done, because he hasn't apologized or addressed them at all.
I think forgiveness is very important. I think it has like several factors. You know, one, you're putting the other person that hurt you, abused you, left you, whatever it may be. I can't hate them. You know, I can't hold it on to it, because it's that hatred within my heart might cause me to hurt someone else. You know, if you've heard of it, hurt people. And I don't want to be someone who hurts people, you know? And, you know, like with my mom, she was a drug addict for years, you know, who died when I was 9, but I never knew her in the first place. So for years, I was just like, why didn't my mom want me? Why couldn't she get, I found her Facebook page like a year ago, and she had all these posts on here. And if you ever seen like the posts of a drug addict, they're kind of like all over the place. And she also struggled with some neurological issues as well, like schizophrenia and stuff like that. But for years, I was like, why? Why couldn't she reach out to me? Why couldn't she just pick herself up off the streets and get better? You know, and at least talk to me, you know? And for years, I just struggled. Like before I would go to sleep at night, I would just cry, because I just wanted to be held by my mother. And no one could give that to me, you know, nobody, not a girlfriend, not, you know, a grandma. I didn't have a grandma, but no one could give that to me but her, and she doesn't exist anymore. So, you know, even that she's not here, I still had to forgive her in order to move forward with myself. And then even with my father, you know, he recently got out of prison. He's a wildfire firefighter, you know, he fought some of the fires in Colorado and in California, all over the place. And seeing him like pick himself up, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever done something wrong, like whether it be like criminally or just in general, but there's this transition you go through. Is like, I can either go further into the pit that I've dug myself, or I can do my best to get out of it. And that's something that's really hard to do. You know, once you're in a bad position, once you've made a mistake, once you've hurt people, once you've broke the law, it's hard to get up again. You know, my dad struggled in so many ways. You know, he always went to work, but he struggled with alcohol. You know, he tried to get us a house, but when you're a felon, it's hard to get a house. You know, even if you got kids that are hungry and need a place to live. So I had to forgive him for what he did and the abuse and how he abused me. And it was difficult. It took a long time for me to like really get through that. You know, I even wrote a letter advocating for him to get more time in prison, you know, and he ended up getting out on good behavior, and I'm happy about that, you know. Like thinking back, because in that time I was in a time of resentment, of hatred, and I was like, I want him to suffer. But then I realized I don't think that's the right orientation to be in. I've had foster parents that have forgiven me for just being, you know, me. I've always been a very blunt person. I've said some very hateful things to my foster dad, and he's had to forgive me. And I've had to forgive him for being crazy. You know, if you're holding on to unforgiveness, I strongly recommend that you try to work through that and like actively work through it. And I wouldn't say it's a one-time thing, it's a daily thing. You know, like I still sometimes got to go back at my emotions and forgive my dad again, forgive my mom again, forgive all these people again, because yeah, it's a daily thing.
You did it. That was awesome.
That was great, actually.
Yeah. That was so great. Foster Kids Rock on 3.
Yeah.
One, two, three.
Foster Kids Rock!
Let's go. Walker.
Hit the link below for perception box questions that invite you to zoom out, soften up, and see things a little bit differently.